and now it's the wearing of crucifixes. The round disc wafer with IHS symbolizing Isis, Horus, and Seb that was eaten for the soul in Egypt is now the wafer of the Eucharist in the church. The painting of the child and the mother with the glory of the sun around them is now called the icons in the Eastern Catholic Church. Infant baptism and sprinkling, all of these things were pagan. The concept of necromancy, talking to the dead, takes place in Christian mysticism and miracles in the church today. The first day of the week, or Sunday, was kept in honor of the sun god in every culture. And today, the Christian world is honoring that day. The concept of Pontifex Maximus, the name of the chief pagan deity, is now the Pontifex Maximus of the Christian church. Janus and Sibyl were once the holders of the keys in Asia Minor, and now the Pope claims to be the holder of those very same keys. The concept of a high priest king carried on the throne is seen in the Pope being carried in the Sedia Gestoria. The pagan high priest king was believed to be the incarnate sun god, a representation of the God in heaven. The Pope claims to be the vicar of God on earth. Offerings were offered to placate and appease the god. These concepts became penance and indulgences, salvation by works in the church. Anciently, there were houses for prostitutes, priestesses. Today, the church has adopted the concept of nuns. And throughout the years of sun worship, the enemies of the sun were offered as human sacrifices. And in the Christian Inquisition, over 50 million lives were destroyed. Many of them were burned at the stake. A comparison between this cult form of Christianity in Rome and Hinduism, again, gives us a direct parallel. In Romanism, the Bible was kept away from the laity and put in an obscure language, and only the priest was believed to understand it. In Hinduism, it was believed that only the priest could understand the Vedas, and it was kept from the common people. The use of rosary or beads are to be found in Hinduism. The concept of penance is to be found in Hinduism. The prayers that are given for the dead are to be seen in Hinduism as well. The concept of a last rite as a man dies is to be found in Hinduism. The concepts of candles burning on All Saints' Days can be seen in the Diwali festival of Hinduism. And the relics of the saints or of the holy dead that are honored in the Christian church is a worship that has come from 2,000 years before in Hinduism. We know that Romanism sits up and watches the corpse at death, and so does the system of Hinduism. Candles burned around the grave or the dead is to be seen in Hinduism as well. Sanctuary lamps are seen in both the Hindu temple and in the Roman Catholic Church. Candles that are kept burning before images in the church were seen thousands of years burning before the images in Hinduism. Pilgrimages to shrines in Europe and the Catholic world today can be seen in the pilgrimage paths crisscrossing the Hindu world. Holy palm leaves are placed in the caskets in the Christian church, and holy grass was used in Hinduism for the same purpose. In Roman Catholicism, the Madonna and the Child are worshipped, the Queen of Heaven and her divine Son. In Hinduism, it was the worship of Lankriya and Deva, goddess and Queen of Heaven, and her chief son Indra, King of Heaven. The comparison between the initiations between the Christian nuns and the Pujnis, or the nuns of Hinduism, are identical in almost every way. Is Christianity Hinduism? Roman Christianity is Hinduism. Roman Christianity is sun worship. And even today, these rites are continued. As we go into the great Christian cathedrals of worship, find that the rounds of ceremony there, the worship there is in fact the ancient worship that began on the plains of Shinar in Babylon so many centuries ago. How far did the church go in her compromise with pagan idolatry? I'm afraid that the facts would be shocking to you. We find in the book written by Richard Payne Knight on sexual symbolism that the church in southern Italy as late as the 18th century was still encouraging her people to bring to the church symbols of their sexual organs to be offered to the saint Cosmos, originally called Priapus by the pagans. It was discovered that in southern France, the church had sexual organs carved in the apex of their doorways for the people to look at as they entered the sanctuary. The most surprising and shocking part of this vulgar worship was the worship of Priapus in southern France, where this sexual god was placed as a statue under the name of Saint Photon in the sanctuary, and the young women were encouraged to give their virginity to it. God did not leave us without warning. We find that the Bible gives a clear picture of not only what God requires of man for salvation, but of the great dangers that face us in our war to keep the truth pure. The last of the apostles, John, was exiled to the Isle of Patmos. There it appeared that his work for the Lord was over with. But we find that God gave him a number of visions. Those visions gave a description of the history that God's people would face up until the end of time. John was given a vision of how close Jesus was to the church, and how much he loved them, and how he was taking care of them. Jesus was a great high priest in heaven, ministering his righteousness, his counsel, his rebuke, and his warnings to his people. John was given a view also of the enemy of the church through its various forms. He saw the Roman pagan system as a great seven-headed dragon, and he also saw rising from that allegorical sea a monstrous beast with 7 heads and 10 horns. In fact, this beast was made up of symbols that was a combination of all of the systems of pagan idolatry that had dominion over the earth from the time of Babylon. What power came after the Roman pagan system passed off the scene? It was the Roman Church. And this great beast, which is a compromise of all the paganism of the fact, was in fact the Roman Catholic system. We find also in Revelation chapter 17 a magnificent view of the church as a harlot who was turned away from God and united with the political powers of this world. This woman's name is Mystery, Babylon the Great, the mother of harlots and abominations of the earth. And the Lord has warned us to not be a part of her. There are many ways of proving that the teachings of Babylon and the system of 666 have filled the church. Ancient Babylon is now ruins today. The land of Mesopotamia is just a waste place. But we find the curse that resides over Babylon is also over religious teachings. In the time of John, the ancient cults were almost a thing of the past. They were dying in strength. It was necessary for these mystics to regain their power through taking over the new system of Christianity. But they maintained their pagan idolatry. In the British Museum, this great boundary stone from Mesopotamia gives 5 symbols of the sun. Indeed, all of the boundary stones that are to be found around the Mideast give symbolism of the deities of the sun,